Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan live. Status Coup, October 25th. Tuesdays with Grumbine. A lot to get to. I just walked my dog. Steve, in the Northeast, it is fucking humid as all fuck at the end of October. Like
It's humid as hell.
I was schwitzing walking my dog, trying to make this live stream. And she was rolling around in the grass, and I was saying, "Millie, I got 5 minutes till showtime," and she wanted no part of it.
Is schwitzing, is that like Jewish for
Yeah,
Oi,
schwitzing.
Gewalt?
Yeah, that was my my late grandma loved that term, schwitzing, and fakakta. Fakakta was another favorite. Everybody smash that like button, share this live stream. Sharing is caring. We've got a lot of good things to discuss today, including you can't call this a caucus. You can't call it progressive, but the Progressive Caucus folded again like a cheap tent after the neoliberal corporate Democratic Party, huffed and puffed at them. In this case, it was over a letter they sent to Biden, offering the criminal thought of maybe we should try diplomacy and approaching Russia and trying to end this war with a diplomatic solution. They were Pramila Jayapal and others in the Progressive Caucus were scolded for that letter and quickly withdrew the letter. And Jayapal threw her staffers under the bus. So we'll get to that. Also, I didn't put it in the headline, Steve, because a certain company, if you put it in the headline, for some reason, YouTube further suppresses the channel. Did you know that? If you put
I had no idea.
a certain company's name in a headline, also, if you put a certain political prisoner in a headline who's in prison for publishing war crimes, YouTube suppresses that too, if you know who I'm talking about. And if you put a certain city that was poisoned by its government in a headline, we have the data actually that backs these up. Every time we put this criminal company in a headline, if we put this political prisoner in a headline, if we put the poison city in a headline, boom. So we're trying to skate around it by not mentioning the company's name. But we do have a story on said company. If you thought that this giant e-commerce company couldn't go any further below the belt, they've already hit rock bottom in the union busting. Wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear the lengths that this company pulled to try and pin a warehouse fire on Christian Smalls. So we'll get to that. Ron DeSantis debated corporatist Charlie Crist last night. I didn't watch the full debate, but I guess Ron DeSantis is now launching critical native theory. Because he is basically saying that it's a lie that America is on stolen native land. So we'll get to that. And Steve, we briefly touched on the St. Louis shooter yesterday, killed a 15-year-old student and a teacher. I guess not enough dead bodies for the media to care. Wait till you hear how many rounds of ammunition that this shooter had at this school. And I still don't see it on cable news. So a lot to get to. Please smash that like button. Please share this live stream. Super chats are very much appreciated. Thank you, Humorous, for getting us started. We'll read your super chats at the end. Let's start with Pramila Jayapal. So we might not have a complete agreement on Russia and Ukraine, but I think we have complete agreement on we don't really have any progressives in terms of actual let's go to war, like political war. We don't have any of those in Congress now. There's no Shama Sawants in Congress. We know, just as a little history lesson for you folks, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, the Progressive Caucus, they held the line for several months last year. They refused to vote for the shitty bipartisan infrastructure deal if the Build Back Better deal wasn't going to be voted on at the same exact time. The $3.5 trillion Build Back Better deal. After Terry McAuliffe lost the governor's race in Virginia, and the media started pinning it on the progressives, they folded like cheap tents. And Pramila Jayapal said, I take the president at his word that he'll get Joe Manchin to vote for Build Back Better, the $3.5 trillion Build Back Better. Of course, that never happened. But when the temperature gets a little too hot, When the heat is a little too hot, Pramila Jayapal, because she has ambitions, I think, to become Speaker of the House, folds like a cheap tent. So it came out that Pramila Jayapal and 30 Congress people in total, most of whom were from the Progressive Caucus, wrote Biden a letter. They love writing letters, Steve. And in the letter, I mean, I don't think it was anything revolutionary. They said, we think that America should, really start pushing for diplomacy when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. They didn't say anything about, Ukraine is to blame or Russia, they didn't, it really wasn't about blame. It was just, we are where we are. Maybe America should start getting elevating diplomacy and trying to initiate that process, which obviously would mean approaching Russia. Well, Pelosi, the Democratic Party, they did not like this. They did not like this. And within 24 hours, maybe less, they withdrew the letter. Let me read this because this is a stunner. This is from Jayapal's office, if you have that statement, Colin. Representative Pramila Jayapal wrote, the Congressional Progressive Caucus hereby withdraws its recent letter. You could full screen it. Hereby withdraws, where did I go? Withdraws its recent letter to the White House regarding Ukraine. Quote, the letter was drafted several months ago, but unfortunately was released by staff without vetting. We'll get to that in a minute because obviously that's a lie. As chair of the caucus, I accept responsibility for this. Because of timing, our message is being conflated by some as being equivalent to the recent statements by Republican leader McCarthy, threatening an end to aid to Ukraine if Republicans take over. The proximity of these statements created the unfortunate appearance that Democrats who have strongly and unanimously supported and voted for every package of military, strategic, and economic assistance to the Ukrainian people are somehow aligned with Republicans who seek to pull the plug on American support for President Zelensky and Ukrainian forces. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every war ends with diplomacy, and this one will too after Ukrainian victory. That doesn't make sense. The letter sent yesterday, although restating that basic principle, has been conflated with GOP opposition to support for the Ukrainians' just defense of the national sovereignty. As such, it's a distraction at this time, and we withdraw the letter. Jeff Stein of the Washington Post, he wrote, one of the more blatant attempts to throw your own staff under the bus I've seen since getting to Washington. So obviously Jayapal, it's not that this wasn't vetted. Like her staff doesn't just go around and get 30 signatures to sign without her knowing. Obviously she was involved in the process. Let me read a little bit from CNN. People are furious. Jayapal withdraws letter on Ukraine diplomacy. A House progressive leader abruptly withdrew a letter pushing the Biden administration to pursue diplomacy in Russia's war with Ukraine, and about face following furious internal backlash from Democrats who felt blindsided by the move just 2 weeks before the midterms. The move from Jayapal, the head of the Congressional Caucus, came after she released a letter initially signed in June from 30 liberals calling for more diplomacy, a move that appeared to undercut their party's resolute support for Ukraine. Releasing the letter this week was not endorsed by most of the members, and some said they will not sign it now, given how the war has turned in recent days. After Democratic fury began to emerge publicly, Jayapal contended the letter was released by staff without proper vetting and said it improperly conflated her caucus's position. I'm going to go down a little further. One of the letter's signatories, timing in diplomacy is everything, said California Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs, a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I signed this letter on June 30th, but a lot has changed since then. I wouldn't sign it today. Mark Pocan, a former leader of the Progressive Caucus who signed the letter in July, told CNN he found it puzzling it was sent out this week after he signed it in the summer. All right. Obviously, they're lying. They all knew it was going out. They didn't expect
backlash,
which they should have because they're in the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is warmongers. I'll give my quick thoughts. This is two separate things here. One is on Ukraine and Russia, and one is on Pramila Jayapal and the progressives in Congress. We don't have any. Let me restate. We might have some people in Congress that share our policy prescriptions, Medicare for all, free public college, those things. We don't actually have progressives in Congress that are willing to fight for them, that have a backbone, that understand how power works, who understand how to seize power. None. That's from Jayapal to Ro Khanna to AOC, the entire squad. We don't have any of that. That's why you and I talk so much about structural change having to come outside of electoral politics. That doesn't mean don't vote. It is still important, I think, to vote, but you have to have, reasonable expectations. So this is just another case. We know that Jayapal folded last year when it came to the bipartisan infrastructure deal and Build Back Better. And now in less than 24 hours, she folded because of a little pushback. And you want to be Speaker of the House when you can't even deal with a little pushback? So there's that. On Ukraine and Russia, I have a nuanced opinion. I know that's not really acceptable these days in progressive internet vernacular. I don't think we should forget Russia invaded Ukraine. You and I have already talked about all the caveats, and Russia definitely had threats at its border. Russia was lied about NATO. That, to me, does not absolve Vladimir Putin for invading Ukraine and killing all of these innocent people. Contrary to the leftists who can't say anything negative about Putin, he has targeted civilian targets at malls and elsewhere. This is just a fact. Ukraine's not bombing its own malls. Ukraine's not. I don't think they're trying to kill their own citizens. So I'm not I am someone who's not going to ignore that Putin, to me, is a war criminal. With that said, I've been saying for months, us continuing to send weapons to Ukraine, I feel for the Ukrainian people, but that is just greasing the skids of the military-industrial complex, and that is a way to continue this war indefinitely. To those who say, well, Jordan, you're favoring appeasement, then Ukraine can't defend itself. Well, the way to defend Ukraine and stop the killing is to step up the diplomacy. The United States to actually demand Russia and Ukraine come to the table as the world's predominant nuclear power. Instead of sending weapons to Ukraine, the United States should have approached Russia and Ukraine months ago and tried to broker peace talks, even though I think the United States is really sending weapons to Ukraine, not to defend Ukraine, but to have a coup in Russia and overthrow Putin. I'd love to see Putin go, but that can't be the reason to continue this war. So nuanced, I know. I think we should point out that Putin is a war criminal, that Russia should not have invaded Ukraine. Maybe you disagree, but we should have stopped sending weapons a long time ago. And it's just crazy that we're at a point now that even the most milquetoast progressives mentioning diplomacy gets a scorched earth tongue lashing from the warmongers in the Democratic Party.
Well, my nuanced take on this is twofold. Number one, I'm anti-war, period. So I'm interested in no war. But number two, and maybe even more importantly, you can't just look at Ukraine in isolation. Going back, I don't know if you remember the first State of the Union address that Joe Biden gave, but his first words out of his mouth were basically, and I have it pulled up just so I can say it. Basically, in the beginning, he said the very first time he mentioned China, and he was talking about how China, we're in competition with China and other countries to win the 21st century. Then the following year, he came back to compete with the jobs of the future. We also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. Now, I want you to think about that for just a second, Jordan. Have you ever thought of the U.S. as needing a even playing field to compete with the rest of the world? Does that sound like American exceptionalism to you? No, that sounds like us trying to pretend like we're the little kids getting beaten up by the big guys. We have an empire. We have 800 military bases around the world. I think China has maybe 1 or 2 or 11, maybe, I don't know, whatever. Nothing like what we have. Same with Russia. They don't have anything like what we have. What China did was China offered a belt, one road initiative that turned into the Belt and Road by reinvigorating the Silk Road. Okay, that immediately, the investments China did on their entire infrastructure made the U.S. wet the bed, period. And with Russia being tied into that kind of Eastern bloc, these two are persona non grata. So with that in mind, the U.S. recognizes that it's not only losing the production war because neoliberalism demands production be done in poor countries while we benefit from it here in the U.S. We've enjoyed cheap imports. We've enjoyed cheap labor, cheap everything. And now all of a sudden they're shutting that off. So the US, in response to that, is literally trying to isolate them. Well, lo and behold, China, Russia, Iran, South Africa, and the global South as a whole are banding together and say, we're done with this, right? So this invasion of Ukraine is more of a proxy war with the United States enacting its own foreign policy. Now, as you know, I mean, I don't even know why I hide it. I mean, everybody knows I'm a socialist. So as a socialist, I'm looking at this and saying, I never stand for war and I'm against imperialism, period. So the nuance to me here is that within the United States, our progressive caucus, which is supposed to at least sort of loosely represent the left is supposed to be anti-war. The left is supposed to be anti-imperialism. The left is supposed to be a lot of things that none of what Jayapal or the rest of them are representing even sniffs left. It's like, God, if you didn't tell me the name, I'd say, oh, Reagan came back from the dead. I mean, it wouldn't in any way, shape, or form remind me of anything that I'm thinking as a leftist. This is not a pro-Putin position. I hate Vladimir Putin. He's just another stank oligarch doing stank oligarch things. But he is not doing anything that we wouldn't do. If we had missiles and we had foreign affairs right there at our border, we would do something similar. Think about Bay of Pigs and other things that we've done in the United States.
Yeah, I try not to interrupt you, but we talked about this last time, and this is the part I don't agree with you. Putin, by his own words, did not invade Ukraine because of NATO or threats to the border. It was we got to denazify Ukraine. He gave a speech that sounded like Trump. He wanted to, a resurgence of the great old Soviet Union. So I think it's yes, you could say, well, what would the United States do if they were in Russia's position? But I mean, Putin has himself had changing rationales for invading Ukraine.
Just remember, Bush came out and talked about nuclear rods for weapons of mass destruction was the reason we were going into Iraq and the reason we were going into Afghanistan, etc. Our leaders say things to tell people what they want to hear. If people think that, oh, it's a noble mission to go into Ukraine because they're going to denazify, that's the outward message. But the reality is Putin is defending himself against this. I'm, again, no way, shape, or form like man. I can't stand Putin. This is not a pro-Putin thing. This is just an informed thing. I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, the United States needs them to not be successful because we have allowed our infrastructure to deteriorate to a point where we can't compete anymore. And because horrible, evil, wretched people stand against deficit spending, we don't do any deficit spending on rebuilding the infrastructure or on the people or anything else because the neoliberal order of the United States, this is not like a fanciful thing. This is exactly what it is. Guys like Michael Hudson will tell you, Steve Keem will tell you, folks within this space will tell you in spades, this is beyond Ukraine and Russia. This is a part of that whole.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, the reason I'm saying all that is not to defend anybody, but to explain. And as I look at our progressive caucus, they know these things, by the way. They're aware and they're not saying anything. They're staying quiet. They're peddling the capitalist narrative. And they recognize the U.S. has fallen behind in every meaningful way. And now we've got to do something. And that's what's bringing this about. And we've created instability in Europe to defend our hegemony, and we've created instability in the global South to defend our hegemony. And at the end of the day, we are willing to do whatever it takes to maintain that Goliath of a military.
But here's the issue, and here's why I think, and again, I mean, nuance is really, it does not sell on the internet, particularly in progressive circles these days. But to me, there's two separate issues that a lot of people have trouble separating. One is the United States is an imperialist power that doesn't go to war for altruistic reasons, that's not defending Ukraine for altruistic reasons. We should also talk about the natural resources in Ukraine.
Yes.
that Russia wants, and I think the United States want. So you can be not down with the military industrial complex. You can criticize America. America is the reason NATO pushed eastward and broke its promises to the Soviet Union. NATO and the U.S., which basically is the head of NATO, promised we will not move eastward of reunified Germany when the Soviet Union fell. Obviously, they broke that promise in 5 minutes. So you could be as anti-American military-industrial complex and acknowledge that America is. I mean, Jeffrey Sachs just got scolded during a speech, an economist, right, for saying America has been the most violent country of the 21st century so far. So I'm all down with that. But if people's disdain and anger towards the U.S. military-industrial complex, if that clouds your ability to, at the same time, say Russia needs to be condemned here, because I am anti-war. So if missiles were pointed at the United States, I would not, from Mexico, I would not be for invading Mexico and killing innocent Mexicans. I just wouldn't be. You could say, well, what do you want the United States to do then? This is how war works. I am anti-war. So I would criticize any country that invades another country because I am anti-war. So I have a problem with a lot of leftists. They seem to only focus on like Ukraine and Nazis in Ukraine.
Yeah,
interesting that they only want to focus on Nazis in Ukraine. They don't seem to say anything about Kanye West's anti-Semitic Tour de Force
in the U.S.
So they're not so worried about Nazis in the U.S. They don't ever talk about the growth of white supremacy in the United States. They don't talk about the rise of anti-Semitic violence in the United States, which has been up 34% in the last 2 years. Yep. They don't talk about that. They talk about the Azov Battalion and Nazis in Ukraine, because it's not about Nazis with these people. It's about we need to be critical of the Biden administration, and we need to be critical of the military-industrial complex. I'm with you. I've been saying we need to stop sending weapons to Ukraine for months. But if you're only going to focus on that and you're not going to criticize Vladimir Putin, who has killed an untold amount of innocent Ukrainians, if you're not going to call him a war criminal, if when you call this a proxy war, which I think it is, you're not going to, Putin doesn't exist. Yeah, Russia should have invaded Ukraine. Then I can't have an intellectual discussion with you, because it seems to me in that case, I mean, you're just focusing on your hate of the United States military. The United States, contrary to what these people say, the U.S. did not invade Ukraine. Russia did.
Right.
I mean, that's the truth. And maybe, I mean, I'm not a religious Jewish person, but I am Jewish. I was raised learning about the Holocaust. I do have a problem with innocent people being slaughtered, just like I have a problem with the United States helping Saudi Arabia commit genocide in Yemen and all the other places the United States is helping brutal dictators kill innocent people. So that's my only point. Not that like we should be, have Ukrainian flags in our Twitter profiles and let's send endless money to Ukraine. I think if we keep sending weapons to Ukraine, and I've said this for months, we're just literally giving it a blank check to continue this war for years. And I think what the United States need to do, which they don't want to do, is initiate and engineer a diplomatic solution that, you know what, Ukraine is probably not going to get everything it wants, and it's probably going to have to accept things it doesn't want. And Russia is probably going to have to accept things it doesn't want. That's what diplomacy is. Everybody leaves, bitter about something. But that's my only problem. I think there's certain people on the left that are so blinded by like down with the MIC that they forget Russia's role in this.
My final take on this, there's a lot more to say, but I'll just end it with just simply, whether Ukraine would accept a peace or not accept a peace is almost secondary to whether United States interest would accept a peace. And because the United States is needing air cover as much as anything for it's pressing. I mean, you got bipartisan agreement for a hot war with China. This is a part of a larger geopolitical struggle, and the finances and the economics of it all are really hard to turn your back on once you realize the United States is a dying empire. It really is. And because we allowed ourselves to gut our infrastructure and gut our productive capacity. We're frantic because now the end of cheap stuff is coming. And that's what they're trying to fight against. I mean, I know it's hard. Sometimes it's an abstraction, and you can be very angry at Putin for invading Ukraine. You can be very angry at the Azov battalion. You can be, but the real story beyond any of this is why the U.S. wouldn't want Ukraine to negotiate a peace anyway, because the goal is not for that to happen. The goal is to create that balkanization of China, Russia, and the rest of them. I swear, if ever I've been sure of anything, I'm sure of this. I mean, this is for me really, really tough stuff, because it takes more than a bumper sticker to get through. It's nuance. It requires, an understanding of not only history, but geopolitical truths that are happening. And this is not like I mock, the 900 member Azov battalion. Okay. In a grand scheme of things, 900 people. Okay. Right.
Hey, Steve, I got a secret for you. There's There's a lot more than 900 white supremacist neo-Nazis in the U.S. military.
Right here. In fact, I mean, to your point, there's a lot of so-called leftists that are bonding with neo-Nazis right here. And that ain't the people I'm talking about. I mean, crystal clear. There's a delineation between the people I talk to and the people that say that shit. I am looking on the other side of the coin, and I'm understanding the geopolitical nature of this without simultaneously finding a way to legitimize QAnon, and without trying to legitimize white supremacy and white nationalism. Completely not anything to do with that. Completely just an informed take on what the neoliberal project is doing. That's my
well, you and I actually agree on the why the U.S. is doing this.
Jordan.
we agree on why the U.S. is doing this. My point in all of this is I'm not down with people that seem to have like an eye patch on one side of their eye and can't say anything about Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
Can't say that Vladimir Putin and Russia invaded Ukraine, that Vladimir Putin has committed war crimes. If you can't say that, if that's too nuanced for you, then piss off. And I just want to read one comment before we leave, because this goes to a broader problem, Steve. Not leave, but before we move to the next topic. So, free thinker. You're not much of a free thinker, by the way, judging by this comment. Jordan, this is why I don't watch and support you anymore. You have lost your way. Much love and peace to you, but I'm out of here. I only came in because of the, quote, withdraw thumbnail. Watch Garland, kids. So you're not a free thinker, by the way, if you're still watching. But this is the problem, Steve, and you and I have talked about this. And I'm to anyone watching right now, if you are the type of person that if your existing views are not fed to you 100% of the time by a YouTube show or a commentator or a reporter or someone like Steve, and when you don't hear your opinion validated 100% of the time, I'm gone, unsubscribe and go fuck yourself. Seriously, that's probably not good of me to say, but if you literally only want to watch shit and basically go to your own internet pep rally that validates your pre-existing views, you're no different than a Fox News viewer. You're no different than a CNN viewer. You're certainly no different than an MSNBC viewer. And this isn't to all viewers, because there's plenty of viewers that watch and, hey, I don't agree with you on this, but they don't like take their ball and go home. But a growing trend in leftist circles online is if people watch a show and they like that show, but all of a sudden the host and them don't agree on something, unsubscribed. Goodbye. If you'd rather, have whatever takes fed to you 100% of the time, I don't need you here. Your thoughts on that, Steve?
Well, real quick, there was a comment in there that kind of piggybacks off this that I think is really important. I took out student debt, right? I took it out. There's no question I took out student debt. I took it out because I was trying to provide for my family. But simultaneously, the thing you didn't know is that I wasn't born into a wealthy family that had the ability to send me to school and be able to get me to where I could take care of myself. That wasn't the lottery of life that I was born with. The idea of you did this, so that's that, and not taken into the larger picture is where left politics, right politics, and in particular U.S. politics blows. It is a Pee Wee Herman peep show, in my opinion. That's how bad it is. So if we're not going to sit there and understand how things come to be, inputs, outputs, tools, and techniques, always think in those terms. If you don't understand how things come to be, and you just, well, they did it, and that's that. It's like say, well, you took out a damn student debt. Pay your bills, you son of a bitch. I mean, that's the kind of logic that I'm seeing with some folks, and not understanding that there's a larger picture at play always. If you want to be informed and you want to really have an ability to see the world, you've got to take a step back from the visceral right here, right now in my face, and consider how things come to be. It's like, when you look at somebody in the inner city and somebody shoots somebody, that's a horrible thing. But a racist will sit there and say, see, we know what those type of people do. Hey, you're the one that picked up the gun. You're the one that shot him. Look, this is the deal. And so this is the kind of logic that I think a lot of people are stuck with, this reactionary, knee-jerk kind of reproach. Instead of
it's a complete. Let me tell you something. And straight up, this is the Jimmy Dorification of the online left. I have to say it. I've avoided using his name. This is the Jimmy Dorification of the online left. And what that means is nuance means you're a sellout. If you offer any nuance, you're a sellout. If you're not all 100% have AOC derangement syndrome or Bernie is a fraud, if you're not all that and you're not breathing the same fire I'm breathing, you're a sellout. You're no different than the MSN. And it's literally almost like it's almost like putting a needle in your veins of tribalism. That is the Jimmy Dorification. And you want to know what? It's funny because I know Jimmy. We're not friends anymore, but I knew him at the Young Turks. And behind closed doors, this wasn't how he spoke. He actually was a nuanced guy. But he's now, basically, in my view, he knows where his audience is. It's more right wing, and he's feeding them the meat that they want to consume. But this is, if you can't allow yourself, and this isn't about Russia and Ukraine, just period. If the left, which a lot of it lives online, if you now are at the point where you don't even want to hear different perspectives, whether they're neoliberal, conservative, even within the left, different perspectives than yourself. Or you think if somebody that you respect, if it's a YouTube host, if it's a reporter, has a different take on something, that means sell out, or that means they've gone soft, then you need to go outside and touch grass. I'm not talking about if I started changing my language in terms of talking about access to healthcare, or I started changing my tune and softening my tune on Medicare for all, or if people started softening their tune on a Green New Deal, or if I started talking a lot less about political corruption, then you would have a point to be like, you know what, something's going on with this channel, and I don't want to watch it anymore. But if a channel, whether it's me, Steve, or anybody else, if you just have a different opinion than somebody, or you don't agree on a certain topic, and to you, your mind thinks that means they've sold out, then you've been manipulated by lizard brain people that are just preying on your anger. I want to move on to the next topic, but give you a last
one point, and I think this is valid, right? There's a professor that I spoke with a long time ago, really, really brilliant academic named Lua Kamal. And, she talked to me and she said, something, you keep asking me about good and bad. You keep asking me about, right and wrong. And she said, something, you did not know everything you know today, yesterday. And yesterday you did not know everything you knew 5 years ago, and so on and so forth. She says, everybody's at a different point in their journey, learning, getting to know the world around them, whatever they were taught as a child in their homes, whatever they were taught in school, whatever they learned from whatever outlets they've watched over the number of years. I had a lot of exposure to the stuff that I've learned later in life. I was raised in a Reagan household. Everybody's heard my story. Most people have heard my story.
You were a Bush guy.
I was a Reagan guy. Let's go farther. I was a Reagan guy, right? And my house pictures of Ronald Reagan did exist simultaneously next to JFK, but they were still Reagan everywhere, and stars and bars.
Come on, man.
So ultimately, I kind of grew up around that, and it took a lot to disengage all those thoughts and rewire the brain. And then I traveled sort of through the Democratic Party, and I realized, oh my God, look how fucked up they are, for not as a Republican, but as somebody who's listening to what they say, believing, and then watching what they do and say, wait a minute, what the hell am I watching? There's a journey. There's a political journey. There's growth that everybody goes through, and we all start out at different places. I think it's important, while we need unity, to give everybody just enough room to learn and grow and develop. This is hard stuff to know. There are people that get paid big money to learn this stuff, and they're learning, right? So why aren't we more gentle with one another as we're trying to develop additional knowledge? I try to wake people up. I shake them up. I do all kinds of stuff to get them to think. But the reality is that it takes a lot of effort, lots of reading, lots of talking to get to a place where you have a more mature view of what's happening. And I think we owe ourselves a little bit of a break. It's very brutal. The world is coming at us hard and fast. There's lots of propaganda. Weeding through that, getting to the truth, takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of commitment to it. So just be gentle with each other. We're not going to find unity if we can't somehow or another find a way to be gentle with one another, so that we can learn this stuff together and develop a more coherent political analysis that allows us to make better choices. That's my soapbox. I'm done.
Very eloquently put. The last thing I'll say on this, putting aside Russia and Ukraine, I got to tell you, we don't have, again, we might have elected officials like the squad who, in theory, share our policy goals, believe in Medicare for all and these things, even Bernie. We don't have anyone in Congress that actually understands power or wants to use power. Like the AOC, who's now like going around on, I think she went on the Pod Save America, like Obama's BFFs, you know, those bros who worked for Obama. She was on Pod Save America, like laughing about French fries. They're like neoliberal bros. She's not willing to fight the Democratic Party. Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, all of them. They just showed you again the tiniest iota of heat that they get from Democratic Party leadership, they're going to fold. And now it's within 24 hours. So I'm not telling anyone what to do. Vote, don't vote. That's your choice. But in terms of actual structural change, which brings us to our next story, it's not coming from AOC and the squad, because they're not willing to exercise power. They're not willing to threaten anything. I guess they went to Washington and got neutered by Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic establishment. Moving on, Steve, this is a sickening story. Absolutely sickening. As you know, I went up to Albany about 2 weeks ago to cover the rally 2 days before the union election, the ALB1 Amazon warehouse that was going to hold their union election. If they won, they would have become the second unionized Amazon in the country. Unfortunately, they lost, which we'll get, we already discussed some of the reasons they lost. But Amazon's union busting, I mean, has just gone to levels that I didn't even see what they were against the workers in Staten Island. It got a lot worse towards these workers, to the point of threatening disabled workers. So I want to play this clip and set it up for you. So before the union election, which happened last week, again, unfortunately, they lost up in Albany. Basically, Amazon is spending millions of dollars on these consultants and leadership consultants. They come in from out of state. Amazon paid for them to go into the Staten Island warehouse months before their union election and just push propaganda, pull workers aside to lecture them on why they should vote no. Obviously, fortunately, it did not work in Staten Island. But Amazon in Albany, it was described to me, there were more union busting consultants flown in from out of state than actual Amazon managers at this warehouse. And I was told that workers basically felt like these union busting consultants were hovering over them, like hovering over their stations. Workers felt that they were being harassed in some cases by these union busting consultants who pushed the same propaganda and also told these workers, hey, if this union passes, we might have to lay people off, might have to cut some hours, benefits might not be so great, which is all, by the way, union busting and against the law. But Amazon does it because there is no teeth to the National Labor Relations Board. There's no criminal penalty for union busting in America. So in one case, we got audio of it, which we will air in a bit. A worker with a cognitive disability, so, just a mental challenge, snapped, basically, not violently, but was sick of these consultants harassing them. So he told one consultant, please leave me alone. Maybe raised his voice a little bit. Amazon brings him in to HR, and they open an investigation into that worker. I want you to know what else Amazon said to this worker or asked this worker. Again, very important, has a cognitive impairment. So I don't know what that is, but has a mental challenge. Colin, let's play the clip. This is part of my interview with Heather, who was the lead organizer at ALB1 for this union campaign. There's been audio of literally HR investigating a worker with a disability. They won't put it in writing what exactly they're investigating this person for. It's clear that the person is under distress. This person was escorted out of the building, and I don't know if they were fired or whatnot. Now there's another worker. There's audio of similar circumstance. Why is Amazon investigating workers with disabilities, and why won't they put anything in writing about it?
So there's actually 3 now. So we've had 3 in a week. Now, the first one was a person who does identify as a person with disability. And I want to touch on that for a moment because this particular worker does identify as a person with disability. And he was called into a meeting right after the fire, and he was asked if Christian Small set the fire. And this person with disability said no. And then they asked him if the ALU set the fire, and he said no. And then they proceeded to ask him if he set the fire. And of course he said no. So the fact that they targeted this person with disability and in a vulnerable state to question and interrogate him about the fire, when we know that local authorities were investigating the fire, is a huge problem. So as of today, the first worker I just referred to about the fire is now suspended. Is now suspended. So he had also filed a complaint with the Division of Health and Human Services. And lo and behold, he received a call from Amazon's attorney telling him or asking him to propose a settlement amount. So clearly they know that there is a liability factor. So that's the first person.
Can I just ask you on this person, call me a cynical journalist? Sounds to me like Amazon was bringing in somebody who maybe cognitively has some impairment to rope them into making false charges against somebody like Christian Smalls so that they could say, hey, one of the workers gave up Christian Smalls, set the fire.
Or to try to get him to make a statement that could have been misconstrued. So they definitely targeted 3 people that all have, I will say, similar challenges and can be, forced into a vulnerable situation where they may say something that could easily be conveyed as incorrect, or they could have manipulated that statement. So there was a clear malicious intent in all 3 of these cases.
Tell people what you were dealing with in terms of the union busting and kind of some lessons you might have learned. You could pull out.
So some of the things.
We'll air that full interview tomorrow. Steve, first of all, Amazon's stupid because Christian Smalls wasn't even in New York the night of the fire, so I don't know how he could have started it. But here you have, let me just restate what happened here. This worker has a mental impairment, is vulnerable to being taken advantage of, manipulated. Amazon brought him into HR and opened an investigation because he basically asked one of their union busting consultants to leave him alone. And oh, by the way, while we're threatening your job, can you, Christian Small started that fire, right? No, he didn't. Well, somebody at Amazon Labor Union started the fire, right? No, not that I know of. Did you start the fire? Again, this is a mentally impaired person. No. Then they escorted him out of the building, left him kind of hanging in the balance for days without knowing if he was fired or not. When he got back when he went back to the warehouse, his key card didn't work anymore, and now he's been suspended. So the worker, like she said, files a complaint with Health and Human Services. All of a sudden, an Amazon lawyer calls to try and strike a financial settlement to basically keep this quiet. If we had a sane media system, Steve, this would be a fucking scandal. They're literally preying on someone with a disability, and mental disabilities, a little different than physical, but it's a disability. Yeah. And targeting a vulnerable worker to try and get him to pin a fire on Christian Smalls, which, by the way, media would have ran with that, even if Christian Smalls had evidence that he wasn't even in New York at the time of the fire. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are big business is out for big business. They don't want labor. Labor in no way, shape, or form is something they want to support. You can expect a lot more of this. I mean, I've told some stories, but when I was in the union at the CWA Local 2222 out in Northern Virginia as a cable splicer, we would go out and there was all kinds of accusations that the union went out and sabotaged the cable, that it cut the cable at the choke, cutting off a hospital, wrecking it. And so these are all tactics that have been used forever. I mean, this is not new. I mean, going back probably to Eugene V. Debs' times, I'm sure he would have had, if he's still around, some great stories to tell. They're pulling right from the book. And since unions have like almost no power right now, they're just trying to get reinvigorated. They're like trying to put their big boot right on top of it and say, not in my house. And so you can pretty much guarantee that they'll set people up, they'll do whatever, and they'll have the cover of the government, they'll have the cover of law enforcement, they'll have the cover of the media, and you're doing God's work, bringing it to the people.
And by the way, that was only one worker. They've messed with two other workers with disabilities there. And listen, this warehouse that held a union election last week, they lost by 200 votes. It was only 66% voter turnout. So that's a lot of votes they lost at. But I can tell you, having spoken with some of the workers there, those union busting consultants and Amazon put the fear of fucking God in these workers. Made them think that Amazon could find out how they voted. It's supposed to be secret ballot. But Amazon, the union busting consultants, said things to workers that made them worried that Amazon would find out if they voted yes and fire them. Yeah, if I'm just a worker that's living paycheck to paycheck and I badly need this job, or this is one of two jobs. Yeah. If I don't know my labor rights, if I don't know that's illegal, I might vote no if I think my job's on the line or they could find out. And also you got to remember with JFK 8, which was Christian Smalls and the Staten Island workers, right, they had a year of organizing and they were rejected at first from even holding a union election. So they had a lot more lead time. That doesn't mean take away from their accomplishment, but the Albany warehouse, they got the approval to hold an election, and then it was going to happen like in a month after that. So it's an uphill climb when you are just, the organizers are about 20, 30 people up against an army of union busting consultants coming in there and basically playing a game of psychological warfare against working class people that work at Amazon, basically making them feel that their jobs are on the line if this union passes. So I don't know what the answer is. As we said, there's going to be losses. I don't think this is going to be like Starbucks where it's just like lightning in a bottle and you have all these coffee shops voting yes, because not taking away from Starbucks, but those coffee shops are at most 20 to 30 workers. These are warehouses with hundreds of people. And Starbucks is not hiring. They are bringing in union busting consultants, but it's not like 50 of them in warehouses. So that's why it's so important to cover this. And like I've always said, these are not the sexy stories, Steve. I've had to get to the point where I can't even put Amazon in the headline because my data guy has shown me that when we put Amazon in the headline, we put Julian Assange in a headline, we put Flint in a headline, YouTube actually suppresses our show, our live streams more. So I'm trying to do things like union busters target disabled instead of putting Amazon in a headline. So if you value this reporting, if you want more investigative reporting on the union busters, please support us. Please, statuscoup.com/join. We're doing our members call Thursday night, by the way. So if you're a Status Coup member, Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern is our members call. It's through Zoom. So please support us, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. If you're already a member and want to support us a different way, we are pushing for donations too to GoFundMe. As you know, we launched our GoFundMe years ago. We never officially closed it down. I'm not going to lie. We just lost $1,000 a month. As I told you, we were making $1,000 a month by doing call-in. Our contract ended with call-in. They didn't renew it. So that's $1,000 down the drain. And we don't have any money from the big banks, the fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, or the military industrial complex. No money from Democratic Party donors or Republican Party donors. On the ground reporting, investigative reporting, it's very expensive. So please consider supporting us. Sorry for that long-winded promo, Steve. Did you have any last thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I think you covered it, man. Bottom line is that unions, they're very, very small right now. We don't have a lot of unionization throughout the country. So support it wherever you can find it.
Absolutely. So I want to move on, Steve. You know, the culture war is thick down in Florida. And Ron DeSantis, he's going to win re-election. He's running against the plain Jane corporatist, Charlie Crist. But Ron DeSantis has now taken his culture war to a new level. And he is just straight up denying American history. Did you see any of the debate between Ron DeSantis and Charlie Crist last night?
I saw a couple outtakes. I'm interested. Okay. I know you guys got the good stuff.
So last night, Ron, Charlie Crist basically hit him on, his fascism, the fact that he won't even promise to serve a full term because he's obviously going to run for president pretty much right away after he gets reelected. But he brought up the critical race theory stuff. Wait till you hear Ron DeSantis's response to the critical race theory stuff. Now he has added to his cap critical native theory. Colin, if we play the first clip.
Yeah, so it actually, if you look around the country, they do have programs, unfortunately, well, they will take a student, look at their race, say, okay, you're white, you're an oppressor. If you're black, you're oppressed. And think about what that does to a 6 or 7-year-old kid. That's wrong. You're seeing that. You have people that are teaching, and actually his running mate has said this in the past, that teaching the United States was built on stolen land. That is inappropriate for our schools. It's not true. And I'm happy that we're going to be able to have accurate history, and we're going to make sure that we honor those who have sacrificed so that we can be free.
Jesus, what a disgraceful pack of shit, man. Holy fuck. Sorry.
Fuck.
Dude is a douchebag extraordinaire and a Seagull right-wing asshole.
And keep those super chats coming. We love you, and I'm going to read them at the end. First of all, just from a performance standpoint, this guy would get crushed by Trump. If you watch any bit of this debate, he's very awkward, and he was very, very. Charlie Crist is not like anything that's going to give you a tickle. And Ron DeSantis got steamrolled in many cases by Charlie Crist. And in some responses, he was kind of like hemming and hawing. He looked uncomfortable in some responses. Trump would eat him fucking alive on a debate stage. So that's number one. Secondly, you have kids. Are they put in separate rooms? The room he was talking about, oppressors go in this room and the victims go in this room. What? I can't even believe. A lot of Republican voters, I'm sorry, are fucking stupid. But I can't even believe they believe this shit. This is so absurd. Students are not being taught that white kids are not being taught that you're the oppressor. This is not happening at all. If anything, white children are not being taught anything about America's true history. I certainly wasn't in school. I wasn't taught the truth about our oh no, Americans and the natives, they got together on Thanksgiving and had dinner. It's just made up, and people eat this shit alive because it is just the last trial balloons to white grievance. That's what this is. But secondly, as somebody, I'm not native, obviously, but as somebody who spent a lot of time at Standing Rock, I mean, by the way, a lot of Florida land is native and indigenous. It's not true that America was built on stolen land. What grade did you get in U.S. history, Ron DeSantis?
Even the old school conservative history explained that we came and we saw and we took. I mean, I was thinking about my old history teacher, like U.S. civics teacher, back in, I guess it was 10th grade. I can never forget her. She had this beautiful, full, big afro back in the 80s, mid 80s. And I remember her talking about the whole, especially the Civil War history and things like that. And she would go by the book. And when she was done afterwards, you could see her going like this. And I didn't really fully understand. And I wasn't prepared to hear, even if she explained. And I think back to myself, how hard it must have been to be her having to teach this shit history to kids, propagating this lie, this myth about the greatness of the colonizers, who were just pilgrims, by the way. They were just people coming, looking for a new way of life. And they met these hostile Indians who blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the level of shit our history tells us. So God bless them. God bless them.
It's just,
God bless their hearts.
It's truly, and you want to know something? The problem with this, and again, I'm not attacking all Republicans. We have some conservative people that tell me they don't agree with me, but they respect my work. So not all Republicans are stupid, but there's a lot of people who then believe what he's saying because it's said as a matter of fact. And Trump has really changed the game in terms of the post-truth society, where if you just repeat the lie, it's the truth. I mean, Herschel Walker, I hate to be graphic. They could have video of him walking in with the woman who they paid for the abortion. He'd say it's doctored and move on. That's not me. Right. But I mean, there are just facts. They're just not debatable facts. And the fact is, we kidnapped, raped, murdered, pillaged. I mean, in Florida alone, Manatee, Seminole. There's a whole lot of other areas in Florida that are indigenous. I mean, but if Trump is prosecuted and can't run, I think he is going to be prosecuted. He'll probably still run. But if for whatever reason Trump makes a deal that I won't run, just give me a slap on the wrist for the various crimes, I think that this guy has a chance to win. I really do. I don't think Biden could beat him. I don't think really inflation is going to be that much better by 2024 because it's not really natural inflation. It's as we've spoken about, it's corporate price gouging that the Democratic Party is not going to do anything about because it's their donors gouging. So it's scary because this guy, before you know it, he'll start coining a term for critical native theory. Now, obviously, slap in the face. I mean, Native Americans, their whole existence has been a slap in the face. But it's just disgraceful. Of course, the debate moderators did not push back whatsoever on Ron DeSantis saying that's just not true that America was stolen. And it shows you what a sad sack of shit the Democratic Party is running against this guy. Because you want to know something? DeSantis could be beaten if you had an economically populist candidate who went after him on, while property insurance is through the roof in Florida because it's a big crisis down there, Ron DeSantis gave $600 million to these corporate fat cats. By the way, Ron DeSantis, yeah, he shouldn't be going after Disney because they're for the Don't Say Gay bill. But you want to know how many tax breaks he gave to Disney? You want to know how Florida has a higher inflation rate than the national average? That's under Ron DeSantis. What's he going to do about it? There are economic ways to attack him, but Charlie Crist, of course, is not going to do that because he's part of the corporate neoliberal status quo. So I digress. I know you got to go, Steve. So we had one more story, but I'll save it for tomorrow. Plug your shit.
Yes, please. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon. Real Progress in Action is our YouTube channel. We have 2 YouTube channels, Real Progressives, where you'll see YouTube versions of the podcast Macro and Cheese Living, and then Real Progress in Action, which is where the Rogue Scholar is, which you see up there. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon. Folks, I'm begging you, come to our YouTube channel, like and subscribe. I promise you, I'm low key, man. I'm hoping you'll enjoy the content. I bring it with Jordan. Hopefully you see value in the words that I bring here as well. And I really, really appreciate being a part of this Status Coup team here. Jordan, you doing good work, man. If you weren't, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun to be a part of this. So really, really appreciate the fact that you're covering these stories, especially unions. And I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to present the economics to the movement. You've got a great, great channel and a great organization, and appreciate it very much for the opportunity.
And everybody, do the patriotic duty right now and subscribe to Real Progress in Action. Got almost 300 people watching. Not all of you are subscribed, I assume. So go subscribe, Real Progress in Action. Watch them. Again, they don't do the sexy clickbait either. They do deep dives into a lot of important stories that don't get covered elsewhere. So please, please subscribe. Steve, could you hang around for 2 minutes? I want to read some super chats.
Yep.
Some of them are probably for you. Super chats were raining today. Humorous, $20. Hello, I'm back after my 30-hour exile from leaving comments on YouTube. I'm here. I think it's like the 12th time this month that YouTube sent me into exile. Too damn funny. Hey, Steve, what's up? What's going on, Status Coup? Thank you, Humorous. YouTube has sent me into exile for 4 years by suppressing this channel. As Kyle Kalinske put it, we are the most suppressed independent media outlet on this platform, probably because we cover substantive things that YouTube doesn't want to share, because YouTube's algorithm only elevates sensationalism, conflict, and people fighting. So they suppress us. In addition to, they don't want to elevate and share stuff about workers, unions, worker strikes, tenants unions, cities, communities being poisoned. They don't want to push that stuff. I wonder why. Double K, 1999. Thank you. GoFundMe donation. Barbara Cody, $250. Holy shit. Colin, if you could get the GoFundMe so we could show it on the screen, that would be helpful. And the link to the GoFundMe, if you want to contribute, anybody, is right there in the description of this channel. To be clear, I always have to say this. We don't have $186,304 in the bank. If we did, I'd be wearing a much nicer shirt. We launched this 4 years ago. We never officially closed it. So we kind of start and stop. We don't want to be begging you for money during, economic tough times. But we're pushing it now. As I've told you, I'm going to be taking a little time off in November and December, possibly some of January, to work full time on my book. So we're trying to fundraise now to keep the lights on. We are going to keep the lights on while I'm gone. We already have a lineup, which we'll be announcing. A fill-in host, Steve, will still be going strong for us. But we need to raise money for on-the-ground reporting while I'm gone, as well as to pay, people who are filling in for me. So please, please contribute if you believe in Status Coup and our work. If you can't, we totally understand, because it's really tough times for people. But if you can, the link to the GoFundMe is in the description under this live stream. Big Trum left $5 in the GoFundMe. Jason left $20 in the GoFundMe. Aaron, $20. Status Coup, keeping it real. Get it, guys. Where's my matching donors at? I like that. Humorous, $20. Aaron, are you asking for a bidding war? Because I'm all in, if everyone else is. I'm happy with a bidding war if it's not coming from Goldman Sachs. Double K, $49.99. Thank you so much, Double K. Always for your support. Charlie, $10. Thank you. Humorous, $2. Ray J is in on it also. Okay. Tony Dallas, $10. I am mad. I called my congresswoman to sign to that letter. Spineless progressives like Jayapal make me sick. Chicken face, fuchsia poop shaped behavior at its worst. Blaming staff is just shameless. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you have to throw your staff under the bus. Ugh, such a Double K, 1999. Love you both. Thank you. VA from New York, $20. It's called historical analysis. Try it. Thank you. I think that was in reference to when we were talking about there's something called nuance. Humorous, $5. Awesome statement, Steve. I wish I had enough money to put Status Coup and Real Progress in Action on the map. I don't have that capability anymore. Every super chat really makes a difference. And go, if you can, support Real Progress in Action too. If you go subscribe to their channel, you could find out how to support them too. Every dollar helps both of us. Double K, 1999, topic dear to my heart. I don't know which topic, but thank you. Humorous, another $20. Steve and his knowledge really is the key to your freedom. And if you're religious, what Steve is talking about is exactly what the New Testament Jesus was talking about. You should really pay attention. Were you dropping Bible verses? I missed that.
I was dropping Bible inferences without Bible verses, but definitely debt jubilees and things like that are definitely biblical. So sure.
Okay. I saw Jesus when I was high once, but that's the extent of my religion. Tony Dallas, $2. Cancer culture is erasing Black and Native history. And can I say something, Steve, real quick?
Sure.
Might not be popular. I say some people should be fucking canceled.
Please do me a favor. Bring your wife's comment up here.
What did she say?
Steveus Christ.
Oh, I love that. And by the way, my wife did come up with the community. That was hers. So she is good.
She came up with grumble too.
Yes, that's right. She came up with grumble. She is very good with phrasing. But I think some people should be canceled. And I think Kanye, it's right that he's being canceled. Free speech, this is how it should work. You could say whatever vile shit you want, as long as you're not calling for violence. And there might be consequences for that vile, anti-Semitic shit. So if you want a land of just, you could be an anti-Semite and make as much money as you want on that anti-Semitism, I think it's good if people, if there's pushback and you lose a lot of money for being anti-Semitic or anti-Black or anti-LGBTQ or name your anti. Steve, thanks so much for coming on again. We'll talk. Again, subscribe to Real Progress in Action. Makes a big, big difference. And a reminder, folks, Thursday, 7 o'clock Eastern. If you are not a Status Coup member yet, what are you doing? StatusCoup.com/join. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. Every membership counts. We really need to boost our membership, particularly with me taking a little time off to focus on finishing my book. So please, please sign up. StatusCoup.com/join. Jan just signed up. So welcome, new member Jan. But we need more people to sign up. So StatusCoup.com/join. If you sign up before Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern, you'll get the Zoom link to join us for our members call. We usually go for about an hour or two. It's a lot of fun. I answer your questions, comments, concerns. So StatusCoup.com/join. One more here. Humorous, $10. Steve is the president that we've all been waiting for 100 years. Jordan is the news for the 99% that we've been waiting for 100 years. I like that. I like that. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Kim Brown will be hosting at 5 o'clock Eastern. So come back then, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.